Hey, my cool cat and kittens. Welcome back after spring break. Well, I'm recording this on the Monday you're not here, so maybe you're watching this later on. But spring break is over. We have just the last part of this unit. And then we have one more very, very short unit. It's only 3 lessons, and then we have our star. So we are almost there, which means you are over it more than you've ever been over it. The weather is nice. We are ready for summer. I'm reminding you we're not there yet. Stay focused, stay engaged. Remember, we're listening to the videos. We're actually watching the videos. We are taking notes. We're highlighting. We're writing anything down that we think is important. You have 9 weeks of school left before we go to high school. You have about 3 weeks, 4 weeks left, depending on when you watch this, until STAR. So we're almost there. Stay in it, though. I believe in you. Your other teachers believe in you. Stay in it. So before spring break, we looked at sectionalism, the idea that the North and the South, and maybe even the West, are believing that their priorities, their needs, their wants are more important than that of the United States itself. We looked at the fact that states' rights, believing that states should have more power than that of the federal government, slavery, and sectionalism are all leading to the Civil War. And we looked at all those different things. We looked at the tariffs. We looked at the Compromise of 1850, the Missouri Compromise, the Kansas-Nebraska Act, all things that were leading to more and more division between the North and the South. And then we looked at the actual first battle of the Civil War, Fort Sumter. So we looked at all of that. Now we are diving into the actual war itself and the aftermath of the war. So we looked at all the things leading to it, the boiling up of tension between the North and the South, and now we are actually into the Civil War as we dive in. It's important that you do know the dates of the Civil War. They will probably be on your test, wink, wink, so highlight those at the top of your notes. It is 1861 to 1865, so we're almost at the turn of the century. In this, you're going to look at several different people. So you will have to keep all these people organized. So you will have a graphic organizer for your activity. So we're going to look at Abraham Lincoln, Jefferson Davis, Ulysses S. Grant, Robert E. Lee, and not really George McClellan as much, but he is in there. You're going to look at areas of the Civil War. We're going to look at actual battles of the Civil War. You're going to be able to look at how landforms, waterways, transportation all affected the Civil War. And you'll be able to look at economic differences between the North and the South, which we've been looking at since the beginning of time. So a review. This is just a review. This was actually from a past lesson, just to remind you of the first battle of the Civil War. So remember, we talked about Abraham Lincoln becomes elected. So he becomes president. He has promised that he's going to stop the expansion of slavery, but that he's not going to get rid of slavery where it is already. So this is about the expansion of slavery, not getting rid of slavery at the very beginning. Okay, things turn. So Fort Sumter is, remember, that Union base in South Carolina. Union is up in here. We have the United States of America, the Union. We have the Confederate States of America, the Confederacy. Remember, we've already divided into 2 countries. Our states have seceded the Union. Lincoln is going to order supplies be sent down to this Union base that's smack dab in the middle of the Confederacy. So this is an American base in another country, technically. And so he is going to send supplies down. He says, deliver them peacefully. That doesn't happen. The Confederacy starts to fire upon the fort, also fires on the ships that are bringing the supplies. And so these Confederate states that are a new country actually fire upon a United States fort, which is grounds for a war to begin. And Fort Sumter is the first battle of the Civil War. So that's just a review to refresh your memory on it. And then after that, 4 more states join the Confederacy. So I want you to sink this in. This would be like all of these states, like right now, Texas is angry over something that the United States has done, and they literally leave the Union, and they are forming their own country. So this is a war that takes place in the United States against Americans. Brothers are fighting brothers, cousins are fighting cousins, all over the idea that states should have the right to choose if slavery expands or not. which was leading to that idea of sectionalism. All right, so here's our key players. Remember I said we got a lot of people. So we have two sides now. Just like any war we've learned about, the Mexican-American War, we had our Mexican leaders and we had our American leaders. In the War of 1812, we had our British leaders and we had our American leaders. So we have the same side. We have two sides to this war. We have the Union and we have the Confederacy. So the Union is the North. Their president is Abraham Lincoln, and their main general is going to be Ulysses S. Grant. Then we have our Confederacy. So we have our American flag, we have our Confederacy flag. They are the South. President Jefferson Davis is their leader, and their general is going to be Robert E. Lee. So you do have to know both sides. Your test is probably going to have some sort of like checkbox of which is Union and which is Confederacy. So if you're confused by any of that, please pause the video and come ask now if you're able. So we're going to look at the North, kind of their resources, and then we're going to look at the South, their resources, and then we're going to go into next lesson, which will be the actual battles. So we kind of got to set up the sides first. The North has a really big population. They have 22 million people in there, and that's important when fighting war. The more people you have, I know this is going to sound gruesome, the more can die and you can replace them. They have a lot of resources. They have factories. That's where manufacturing is taking place. So they have factories that are going to actually create ammunition that the South can't get. They have the ability to make uniforms. I know that sounds silly, but soldiers need shoes, soldiers need socks. So they have factories that are creating resources for them. The main thing that they have, though, is the railroad system. So if you're highlighting anything, we want to highlight this railroad right here. This railroad system, the South doesn't have one. We don't really have railroad systems if you think about it. But if you went to New York or Chicago, they still have public transportation, which is a railroad or subway system, because they just developed that way. And so these are all the railroads they have. And with the railroads, it allows soldiers to move quickly across long distances. It also allows for supplies to move quickly. You put it on that railroad and that steam engine is going to get it there way faster than if you're putting it on a covered wagon. And that's really going to be important for this war. Their leaders, like I already said, are going to be Lincoln is the president, Ulysses S. Grant and George McClellan are going to be their two generals. Ulysses S. Grant, that's the one you're highlighting and circling. He is the most important one of this war. They also are going to have naval power. Naval power just means they have a navy. They have the United States Army. Okay, the Confederacy is having to create all their own stuff because it's a new country. So just as the United States had to do during the American Revolution, they had to create their own army because what they had was British. The Confederacy is having to create their own. So they don't actually really have a navy. The North is going to use their navy to really suffocate the South. So the navy is really, really important for the North. The North had a greater production of weapons. Sorry, I have this hair. Production of weapons because of the railroad and the factories. They can produce more weapons because they have the factory there to make the weapon, and they have the railroads to move those weapons longer distances in a shorter amount of time. The greatest impact, I'm going to say this several times throughout this because it's important, the greatest impact on the outcome of this war. The reason the Union, spoiler alert, wins this war is because of their economic advantages over the Confederacy. That's going to be your weapons, your supplies, your trains, and all of those things. Those are economic resources. And so the economic difference between the Union and the Confederacy, or the North and the South, is going to be what really causes the outcome of this war. The North has a strategy. They have a two-part strategy. First strategy is called the Anaconda Plan. Don't really need to know that. You really just need to know that they're going to blockade southern ports. They're going to put their navy into these southern ports, biggest ones right here in New Orleans and in Galveston. So if you want to write that down, New Orleans, important port, Galveston, important port. If they can block the ports, then the South really has a hard time getting supplies either from overseas because the British and the French are kind of thinking about helping them, or from each other, okay? So they need these ports to get supplies. This is going to cause an embargo with Great Britain. They're going to be able to, they'll be unable to use agriculture exports as a resource from revenue. That's a big word. They can no longer sell their cotton to European countries to make money because the Union has blocked all of these ports or our harbors, okay? The second part is going to be to control the Mississippi River and cut off the port of New Orleans. By controlling the Mississippi River, it's going to divide the Confederacy in half. Here's my little picture. Section A and Section B. They are using the Mississippi River and the port of New Orleans to make revenue off cotton, sending it to Great Britain, and getting resources to each other. Texas is a huge supplier of cattle and cotton. You should know that. You had a whole chapter called Cattle and Cotton. If you can cut Texas off from the rest of it, we're not feeding our soldiers anymore. That's a huge issue. So the Confederacy would be without supplies. There it is. Okay. The next one, it doesn't show up much, but I always keep it into the slides. It's called total warfare. You've probably heard of it. Basically, what total warfare is the idea that you burn everything when you take it over. So Sherman is a Union soldier. He is a high-ranking Union soldier who fought mostly like in the southern states. We'll get into that into the battle. And as he marched across Georgia, he burned the entire place. So as they would leave a city, they'd burn it all down. As they leave a city, they'd burn it all down. As they left a city, they burned it all down. And so by doing this, you're really destroying their ability to do anything anymore. It's not about killing people, it's about destroying their natural resources. And so this is called the March to the Sea. He did this Georgia all the way down to the Atlantic Ocean, so not really the sea, but. And now the South. So we've looked at the North. North is populated, North has railroads, North has economic advantages. The South has 6 million. Okay, so less than half. 22 million was the North, and now we've got 6 million. Leaders are going to be General Lee, Stonewall Jackson. What they really have, this is their main advantage, military power. The top military schools are in the South, mostly in Virginia. And so on paper, the South really should win this war because they have the smartest military generals. They understand military strategy. They understand military logic. So really, in theory, they should be the ones that win, but they don't because they don't have resources. Another advantage is they know the terrain. A lot of this war, I don't know what my next slide does. Okay, a lot of this war is going to take place in the Confederacy, in the South, and so the Confederate soldiers are fighting on their own terrain, home field advantage, basically. We always play better at our own stadium and our own gym, and they know the terrain, which is going to help them, but not ultimately help them. They have a strategy. They're going to break the blockade. They are playing defense. That's why I've got right here, we've got Michigan State playing defense. Go State. So they basically are just going to fight defense. They know the North is going to make its way south, and they are playing defense. Keep the North out of the South, break the blockade. Okay, that's pretty much their strategy. They're hoping that they can just outlast. Can we just fight long enough that the North gives up and we win this war? That's their strategy. They're fighting to protect their family. A disadvantage is they're unable to sell cotton to Great Britain to fund the war. They do not have the economic advantages that the North does. The economic advantages are the factories as well. They're still finishing out goods and selling them. So the economic advantage is not there. They don't have the manpower. They don't have the railroad system. So again, the outcome of the war is going to depend on the economic differences. The South can't sell their cotton because the Union has blocked all the ports. The North is still making finished goods because they have a factory. So this is a huge issue leading into the Civil War. I'm talking fast, I know. So we have our North and we have our South. We have our advantages and disadvantages of both the North and the South. You have our leaders of both the North and the South. Make sure you know you've got to keep all that straight. So we've got our graphic organizer, so take that graphic organizer very seriously because a lot of your test questions from this unit are coming from this lesson and the last one that you'll learn.